Welcome to video 1 of my series, How the Hell Do You Make Dovetails? The first thing to do is secure your dovetail jig to your table. I've used the holes provided in the back to go ahead and screw it down. There is also holes on the front. You don't have to use all 4 unless you really want to. The thing about dovetail jigs is they set up according to thickness of wood first, then travel of cut as well as depth of cut next. You want to take the same thickness of material that you plan to cut and use a couple sample pieces to set it up. So if you can see, there's a stop here that you can adjust in and out with this nut here. And then there's also a stop here you can also adjust with this nut out here. So what you want to do is you want to be able to have these lined up with each other so that the top and the bottom of your work pieces will come out flush. The way this works is you cut both pieces at once that will come together for each dovetail joint. So you've got to set these up together. And first what you want to make sure that you have is this one, this clamp bar here, as well as this bar and these fingers need to be completely flush on the pieces of material that you're using. Then what you can do is push them, once you adjust these to the right height of the material, whether you're using 1/2 inch, 5/8, whatever you're using. These stop pieces that I pointed out are also on this side. When making a box, all of them have to be in line with each other, but it's not as hard as you might think to line them up. Keep in mind that also some jigs don't do half sizes. They're going to go, let's say you can do from like a 5-inch piece to a 6-inch piece, where you might not be able to do a 5.5 or a 6.5 inch piece because the dovetails just wouldn't work out properly within the jig. For these types of dovetail jigs, you're going to need a collar. The reason you need a collar is there's no bearing on the dovetail bit. So this will act as a guide to go in and out these fingers, making your dovetail cut. These collars just screw apart, go into the center of your router, and then tighten up from the back. I figured out with these that the bit is just a little bit larger than the hole on the collar. So you'll need to put the collar on the base, screw the base all the way down, then put in your router bit. Since these are 1/2 inch dovetails, I'm going to set the depth on the router for a 1/2 inch. There is one more adjustment that I'm going to make before I actually start cutting with the router, and that is the length of cut bar, which is this one here. To set your length of cut bar, you'll need to know what the distance is from the collar on your router to the edge of the base, and then usually you'll add an inch. Mine measures 2 5/8, so I set my length of travel fence 3 5/8 from the very front tip of it to the tip of these fingers. I've already set my router bit depth to a 1/2 inch, so now we can go ahead and make a test cut. Now that we made our first couple of cuts, what we want to do is line them up and see how we did. So it looks like we have the fingers are just slightly larger than the tails. So we can correct that by adjusting the bit depth and run another test piece. Now that looks pretty good. I've got this 1/2 dovetail here because these sample pieces aren't true to size. I've got a 3 1/2. So this is what will happen if you don't use full numbers. So let's see if that'll tap in nice and gently. Okay, that tapped in and it stopped. Okay, right here. What does that mean for us? That means that we need to scoot this bar back however much this is thick. It looks to me about a 1/16. So let's scoot that back. And there are marks on these so you can kind of keep your place. Now let's try that one more time. There we go. Nice and easy. Let's see if we got it. Yes, we got the depth just about right. Okay. So now our piece is flush. And you see this tiny, tiny little area here? The reason we have that little black line is because of the bit depth adjustment. Adjusting the bit depth is really easy. You just bring the router base up or down. Since we want it just a little deeper, I'm going to give it a little tiny bit of a turn. Safety gear back on. There we go. Nice and tight fit. There we go. We have a nice fitting tight dovetail that can go the full length in without hitting any stopping points, so you can make these nice and flush. Make sure when you go to set this up that this is the way that you put your pieces in. So the piece that's going to have the tails is going to go here, and it's going to sit flush with the bottom of this one. So if it's set correctly, these should be completely flush right here with each other, as well as no gap in between them. So the top piece will come into this piece that's standing up. Besides these stopping points here for the top piece and here for the lower piece, it's important to keep in mind which cut each one of these is. Whatever's here is always going to get the tail cut, while this top piece is always going to get the groove that the tails will then go into. So make sure you set this up correctly.